This year I've read a lot of books, and most of them were not very good, to put it mildly. But fortunately, I also found some of my favorite books of all time this year, and some other pretty great ones. So, without further ado, here is the list of the best books I've read this year so far. The Picture of Dorian Gray is a story about deception, about the fear of growing older, about dignity, and about different views on aesthetics and ethics. It's a story about contradicting beliefs and how these contradictions lead to internal and external conflicts. When I first read The Picture of Dorian Gray, I was quite young, and since then I have read it at least 5 times in different stages of my life, including the beginning of this year. I usually don't reread books a lot unless I'm emotionally attached to them, and I guess I haven't read any other novel as often as this one. The Book Thief, Die Bücherdieben, is an outstandingly well-written novel. The story is told through the eyes of young Liesel and by Death himself. We are confronted with the tense contrast between the innocent world of a child and the horrors of war surrounding it. The calm atmosphere is carefully built up, and rather than following the characters on a fantastic or spectacular journey, we are simply there, watching the world collapse. Siddhartha is a well-paced story about the nature of experience and about the journey that accompanies it. It's a beautifully written book that touches on a vast variety of different themes and ideas using only about 120 pages. Well, that's for the original German version. It's one of these books you can either simply read in a day and enjoy, or you can come back to throughout different stages of your life and experience the story from a different perspective each time. Die Schachnovelle, The Royal Game, is a story about loneliness, about psychological torture, and about obsession. Throughout the story, we are repeatedly confronted with the strong contrast between wealthy, carefree characters and a man who has been driven to the edge of insanity. The plot addresses politics, the consequences of isolation torture, and the nature of obsession. I'm not going to specifically talk about the plot, as I think the book is best read not knowing too much about it, but I highly recommend reading this one if you haven't. To the Lighthouse is a story about the subjectivity of perception, about the ambiguity and complexity of beliefs, about life, death, and loss. It sounds like a lot of highly different themes, but To the Lighthouse manages to merge them all together in a highly interesting and convincing way. Both the English and the German version stand out by fantastic writing, which at times can be difficult to read, but to me form an essential element of this reading experience. Ein ganzes Leben, A Whole Life, is a book that delivers exactly what the title promises. I really enjoyed reading a modern book that doesn't need to present tons of spectacular events, but rather focuses on exploring the beauty of simplicity throughout a character study. It is a calm and spectacularly simple story about the journey of life. Frankenstein. Now, this one completely took me by surprise. I read it not expecting anything in particular, and I loved every minute of the experience. Basically, it is a psychological study of Victor Frankenstein, a character obsessed with the idea of creating. The writing is phenomenal. The parts of the plot which are not already well known in general pop culture completely took me off guard. The atmosphere created throughout the novel is dramatic in the best way possible. Both Victor Frankenstein and the monster he creates are fantastically crafted characters. It is a story about obsession, about narcissism, about being misunderstood, about the desire to create, about constructing morality. If I had to name my favorite novel right now, it would most definitely be Frankenstein.